Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has declared a state of emergency in 49 counties, while some residents are being urged to evacuate. Larry Seward joins us now. He's a reporter for CBS News in Miami. Larry, what are you hearing from residents as they prepare to evacuate for yet another strong storm heading towards Florida?
Christina, Lillian, nobody wants to lose power, right? But there's also significant concern about flooding in the city of Tampa. Look, the waters of Tampa Bay downtown, right here, they are literally 3 steps away from the road, and across the street there, those are people's homes. People that live there are concerned that this road will be inundated if there is a significant flooding event. Also of concern, Tampa General Hospital just on the other side. If the water rises several feet, that could potentially impact people's ability to get in and out of the hospital. Officials obviously making plans for that, but they're also preparing families for evacuations and potential prolonged power outages.
You know, Larry, last year, I remember in Hurricane Ian, there were doctors that were stuck in hospitals in Fort Myers, Florida, for days. So what you're indicating, I mean, and this storm seeming worse, it just seems like the worries are piling on. Some parts of Florida are still recovering from that hurricane. Could Idalia just set back those efforts?
It can in small ways and big ways. In small ways, first, there was a clinic that was supposed to help with recovery from Hurricane Ian that was scheduled for today down in Fort Myers. That got canceled because of Idalia. That's a small impact on small businesses. That was to help them find financial resources to continue their recovery. In big ways, Senator Rick Scott basically said, look, the rising water kills. We learned that in Hurricane Ian. We lost over 150 people. You need to heed the warnings that this storm could strengthen. The track could change a little bit here or a little bit there, and you may think you're in the clear, and suddenly you're facing rising water. And here in Tampa, even though the eye of the storm is not projected to hit here at all, the storm surge projections, it could be 7 feet, which, as I just showed, it could be significant impact on downtown and beyond. This is a mandatory evacuation zone because of that.
Is there a fear that, given Floridians are pros at hurricanes, you guys deal with this all the time, you hear Category 1, is there a concern that residents will dismiss it and not realize that exactly what you were just talking about is the threat? It's the storm itself, but also the storm surge that come after it. How worried are officials that people won't leave?
Worried enough that they are hitting people with alerts to their phones, radio, TV. I talked to a man who's a doctor in training at a hospital nearby. His building is behind this hospital. It's a tower. He says when you walk through the front doors, there are letters, mandatory evacuation. The management, they've encouraged people to leave as soon as possible to get all of their supplies. They are really peppering every communication outlet to reach as many people as possible with the message that this storm could potentially bring life-threatening storm surge.
Quite serious. Larry Seward, thank you.
As the president said to Governor DeSantis in his own conversations yesterday, FEMA and the entire federal family are activated to support the people of Florida. The president also quickly approved an emergency declaration in advance of the storm in Florida, turning on the many tools that are available at my disposal to provide the governor any support or resources he may need in advance of landfall and then after. This allows me to pre-stage people, equipment, and resources in Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas, and I have done just that. We have pre-positioned different types of resources across all 3 states to include several incident management assistance teams, our urban search and rescue teams, our disaster survivor assistance teams, and they are all ready to pivot to the most impacted areas immediately after the storm passes. We also have warehouses filled with commodities like food, water, blankets, and medical supplies that are ready to rapidly move into the impacted area at the state's request. But we are not in this alone. We have an entire federal family that is postured to support. Our National Response Coordination Center here in Washington, D.C. is fully activated, and this means that there are several hundred staff from across the federal family that are working together to support any requests for federal assistance. We have our partners from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers who are pre-positioned to support any power restoration needs. Health and Human Services is assisting with evacuations from hospitals and assisted living centers. And the Red Cross has 50,000 meals to support the immediate needs as requested and has pre-staged shelter support to supplement the 19 shelters that are already opened by the state. And this is a really important point that I want to talk about next. It's on preparedness. And again, I really ask for all of your help to help me ensure the people in the storm's path get this message. While we are engaged with our states to prepare for the path of this storm, it's critical that the people that are in the path of this storm are also prepared. And I know that the people of Florida are no stranger to storms, and I encourage all Floridians to take this storm seriously. This storm is very strong and is expected to strengthen to a major hurricane by the time it makes landfall due to high surface temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico. This means heavy winds, high winds, heavy rain, and a forecasted 12-foot storm surge in some of the areas along the western coast. This storm surge, this is one of the highest risk parts of a hurricane and is especially problematic along the west coast of Florida due to the underwater geography. The coastal shelf gets shallow very quickly, which increases the amount of the storm surge, putting more people at risk. Very few people can survive being in the path of major storm surge, and this storm will be deadly if we don't get out of harm's way and take it seriously. So I ask all Floridians to be vigilant and heed the warnings of your local officials.
We are monitoring some of these computer models. You may see the National Hurricane Center update the track in either 2 o'clock or the 5 o'clock advisory. There are models suggesting that this is going to take more of a westward shift that could bring it into areas like Jefferson and Leon and Wakulla area even. And people have known that this is a possibility, and I know all those counties are making preparations, but that is something to look out for. There's still a range of uncertainty here. They're going to be updating this track as the day goes on, and we will have probably better resolution on that as we get to the 2 or the 5 o'clock advisory. But that is a possibility. We've been in contact with all the local officials in all these areas, and I know people have been making preparations. So continue to do that. The state is already starting to feel some effects of this in the southern part of the state. You're going to start to feel some effects of it in the northern part of the state, probably later tonight, the beginning of tomorrow morning. We have expanded our executive order this morning. We now have 49 counties total. We've added Brevard, Orange, and Osceola counties, and so, pretty much that top of the state all the way into central Florida. Maybe excluding some of the farther western counties, but there's a huge number of counties that are going to feel impacts from this, and we want to make sure they're able to do what they need to do. We're proud of all the staging that's been done, particularly for power restoration. We're now at over 25,000 linemen as of this morning. That is going to be over 30,000, approaching 40,000 by the end of today, and the goal is, when the power, and you are going to lose power if you're in the path of this storm, you should assume that that's going to happen. And the goal is going to be rapid restoration of power. Some of the parts where this storm is projected to go are a lot of trees. There's going to be a lot of branches, a lot of trees. There's going to be a lot of power lines down. Just expect that. There's a lot of manpower that's going to go to address it, but it's definitely going to be something that is going to require a lot of manpower and a lot of attention. So power restoration is something that is very, very important, and we want to thank these that have marshaled. We've got people coming from southeastern states. We've got people coming from Nebraska coming to Florida to be ready to go to restore power here in the state of Florida, and we think that's important. The local municipalities that have utilities, some of the electric co-ops, all those, please accept the mutual aid. We want to be able to have as much manpower as possible to get that power back on for all of your residents, and we know how important it is for so many Florida residents to be able to get back online. But you should prepare to have some time without power if you're somebody that's in the path of the storm. And by the path, it doesn't mean just in the cone, because there's going to be impacts that are going to be outside whatever the National Hurricane Center says is the path of the storm. There have been evacuation orders issued for people on coastal areas, barrier islands, low-lying areas. You still have time, particularly if in the northern part of the state, you have time to be able to evacuate. You don't need to drive hundreds of miles. You don't need to try to outrun the storm. Just get to higher ground, get into a safe structure, ride out the storm, then you can go back to your place. But in some of these areas, like a Cedar Key, some of these others, along the Big Bend, you're talking about really, really significant storm surge potential. I mean, this is similar 10, 12 plus feet of storm surge could happen in some of those areas. And the storm surge is not something, you're not going to win that battle if you decide to stay behind for that. You run away from the water and then you hide from the wind. And so in Florida, if you get away from where the surge is going to hit, most of the structures that we have, particularly things that have been built in the last 20, 30 years, those are going to be fine for a Category 3 storm. And so you can hunker down there on higher ground where the storm surge isn't going to be a threat. But if you're putting yourself, if you're hunkering down in an area that could get hit by 10, 12 feet of storm surge, that is a life-threatening situation. And we saw that with Hurricane Ian, just how massive the storm surge was. So you are going to see parts of the coast, probably in the Big Bend area, that is going to have really significant storm surge. We actually anticipate the National Hurricane Center to increase their estimates for the storm surge, particularly in the Big Bend, from where it was this morning. So please be advised, you've got time. You've got the ability to do. I know all these counties have opened up shelters. You can go stay with friends, family. I know there's deals on hotels. You still have time to do that if you're in this Big Bend area, but time is running out very, very rapidly.